Welcome back to For the Home Cook. Of course, this show is all about saving money on our grocery bills, and today we're going to talk about some meals on a budget. So I have two options. The thing that I love about these options is, one, they are very low cost. It's very cost effective if you're wanting to make, a meal just for you or two or four people, but also all of these except for one recipe that we're going to make later is shelf stable. So this is all stuff that you can buy. You can keep it on the shelf. You can make it whenever. So it's a good idea to maybe stock up on these items. Or if you look in your cabinet and you're wondering, what do I do with that extra can of whatever that I bought for something that I didn't use, this is a great way to do this. It's low cost, it's cost effective, and it's shelf stable. So let's get started. So I've got two recipes. I'm going to start over here first. So this is a cheesy chicken and rice soup, and literally everything that you see right here in front, all of that goes into the soup. And this is super easy because all we are going to do is add all of this in to a pot and then let it heat up. So we've got a can of chicken. Now, this is the big can. These, especially when you get them in bulk, are really, really cost effective. If you have chicken at your house though, maybe you have some chicken that's been in the freezer, or you bought some and you still have some left over, this is a great way to use that as well. But the good thing is, this is shelf stable. This is something that we don't have to worry about the chicken going bad for us to use it. So I am going to use the juice in here. If you don't want the juice, if you think it's weird or whatever, you can also either put some water in there or some chicken broth, some chicken stock, whatever you have on hand. But we're going to use what the can gave us, which is that extra broth. So then we have a can of black beans that we have drained. We've also got a can of corn that we have drained. And then comes the fun part. We're going to put in some tomatoes and green chilies. We're not going to drain that because that's going to give us some more liquid. The last things that we're going to add is a package of Spanish rice. Now this is the cheaper option. I know that there are tons of brands that you can pick. This one is cheap, so we're going to use this one. And I like this one because, one, it's cost effective. Two, it's got a lot of the seasonings that you would add into your soup anyway. So we're going to add that in there. We're also I'm going to also get some water into this here in just a sec. The way that we're going to make this cheesy though, and you can pick so many ways to make this cheesy, we have a bag of cheese sauce. So if you go to Walmart, these come in a 3-pack for about $3.50, just under $4. You can also go, I've seen these individually in places like Dollar Tree or Family Dollar or Dollar General. So if you want to save some money, you can go and just get an individual package of the cheese sauce. If not, you can get a 3-pack. Also get a box of maybe some, noodles that you can cook up later, make mac and cheese. There you go. So we're gonna open this. Like I said, there's a lot of different ways that you could make this cheesy. They have cans of like nacho cheese sauce that you could put in here. If you have like cheese on hand, you may put that in there, but it's a really easy way just to get us what we need. Now, I will say seasoning wise, mix this up for a little bit. You can add a little bit of seasoning right now. I wouldn't add too much just yet because this cheese sauce is usually pretty salty. So you don't want to add too much salt or too much of a seasoning or a spice, and then all of a sudden it's way too salty. The last thing that we are going to use is some chicken bouillon. So they come in cubes. They also come in a powder. The powder is cheaper than the cubes, so I just got the powder. Also, if you have like the caldo de pollo, you can add that. It's basically the same thing, a little bit more flavoring in that one. So I said 1 or 2 cubes. I'm just gonna I have a teaspoon here. I'm gonna go about half. We'll add that in there. And then at this point, you can add whatever seasonings you want. So if you've got something like salt, pepper, cumin, any of those seasonings that you want, go ahead and add those in there. This is really up to you at this point. So I am gonna add some water for a few reasons. One, we have that rice in there, so we definitely need it to get some liquid so that we can cook the rice. But also, it's gonna kind of thin out our soup, and so that's gonna be good for one, we can feed more people that way. And then two, just makes the soup better. You could also take, if you have a bouillon cube, you could put it in some hot water and then use that as kind of your broth instead of using the powder or just throwing the cubes in there and hoping that they are going to dissolve. We're just gonna add some water and then we're gonna cook this for about 25 to maybe 30 minutes, just kind of watching and making sure that that rice is good to go. You could, if you didn't want to get that rice, if you have a recipe for Spanish rice, or you get a different version that's already cooked, then you can skip this step in terms of just throwing everything in there and heating it up. But for now, we're going to stir this up. We're going to let this come to a boil, and then we're going to drop it down to a simmer and let it simmer for just a little bit. So altogether, this recipe cost me about $9 for everything that we're putting in here. And I will tell you, the biggest cost factor in this one is going to be your chicken, because these are about $2.50 a can. So once again, if you have a bunch of chicken left over for some reason, or if you buy this, I bought a 4-pack, so it was about $7. You might save a little bit of money that way, but that's gonna be your biggest expense, is gonna be your chicken, and then the cheese sauce, which cost about $4. So really this only cost me about $6, not including that cheese sauce. And then you'd probably spend $7 if you go get it individually. So still very affordable. You can make a lot with this, especially with that rice once it starts to actually cook. Rice is a great thing to add into your meals to make them last longer or bigger, because rice is really, really affordable, and you can kind of add it and season it to whatever you like. So we're gonna bring this up to a boil. I'm gonna let that simmer, and that will be good to go. Let me show you the other recipe I have. Now, this one had a name that 3 people didn't like, so we're just gonna call it a chicken pot pie. It's basically kind of the same thought process in terms of flavors and ingredients. So once again, a shelf-stable thing. So I'm gonna just spray a pan. I will tell you, this one calls for a 9 by 13. I thought that was a little bit too big for what I was doing, so you can get a smaller pan. You can do an 8 by 8. The one I have in the oven is about an 8 by 8. Either one of those works. But what we're gonna do is, so all of this right here is what we're gonna use to make that. So I've got a can of chicken. I have drained that, but once you drain it, keep that liquid, because we're gonna use that for a great reason. So we're gonna put that into, you can put this in a bowl and then mix it and put it in here, but I am not about doing more dishes than I have to. So we're gonna put this in here and then just kind of mash it up. A fork would probably be better in this, but you know what? We're just gonna do it as is. So if you're looking at this, you're like, ooh, that's not a lot of chicken. One of 2 things. You can get a smaller container to cook this in, a smaller pan to cook this in, or just add another dill of chicken if that is within your budget. When you put it into a smaller container, it looks like it has a lot more than it does in this pan, which is why I chose the smaller container. I think especially for those of us who are visual, if you see that the pan, like the one I have in the oven, if it's full of food, you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, this is so much food. Whereas if you look at this, you're like, all right, why are we skimping on some stuff over here? All right, so I've got my chicken. We did save the juice to that. So we're gonna add that. I also have a drained can of peas and carrots. Now, when I made this at home, there was a little bit too much peas and carrots in one whole can compared to how much chicken I have. So you can just eyeball it. I would do maybe just the same amount of chicken as peas and carrots. So it's almost a can. Now, if you want to, if you double your chicken, then use the whole can. If you want to save these peas and carrots for some other dish that you're making, go ahead and do that as well. Or if you don't care, just put the whole thing in there. I mean, it's gonna create volume into this dish, which is gonna make it look like it's fuller and meatier and better. So I've also got a can of diced potatoes. Now, once again, these were like $1. If you have like a frozen bag of peas and carrots, just make sure that they're thawed. You can add those in there instead. With the diced potatoes, if you have potatoes at home and you don't want to have to buy the $1 can, just make sure that you peel them, you dice them, and that you partially boil them so that they're pretty much cooked by the time that you put it into this dish, just like it would be from the can. So same thing on this. I didn't need the whole can, just because I didn't want that much potato compared to what I have in here. So I just eyeballed it. Once again, potatoes are very, very affordable. So if you can make any dishes that are based off of potatoes, you're gonna be well off in terms of price. Potatoes are very affordable, whether they're in the can, whether they're fresh, as long as you're getting like russet potatoes. Once you get into the little potatoes, maybe not so much. Sweet potatoes are still affordable as well. But yeah, potatoes are a good bargain for what you're getting. All right, so we've got that. So in a bowl, we have this biscuit mix. Now, they have certain ones, if you already have a box that's just sitting at your house, a biscuit mix, use that. I like this one because one, it's gonna have a lot more flavor in it compared to me just making biscuit mix. Now, with that said, when I made this one at home, I had forgotten to get biscuit mix. And so I made a quick one with some self-rising flour and some milk, and then cut in some butter, mixed all that together. And I added some of the seasonings that you would have found here. So I had parsley, I had basil, parsley, I put some onion, some garlic, any of those things. You can still, make biscuit mix from scratch and then still add some of the seasonings that you're getting from this. So this comes with a seasoning packet. And what we're gonna do is add this in here. We're gonna add in our seasoning packet. We're gonna actually cut the seasoning packet open like we've done this before. And then I'm gonna give this a stir since we're coming up to a boil here. Okay, so I'm turning that down just to let that simmer for a little bit, and you just want the rice to cook. Once again, if you made rice on the side from some other recipe, then you don't have to wait for that, but basically this is rice. It's gonna cook for about 20 minutes. So we'll let that simmer. I'll get a lid here in a sec, we'll put that on there. So to our biscuit mix, we are gonna add a can of evaporated milk. I'm gonna add most of this, and then I'm gonna stir, I'm gonna see where we're at. You basically just wanna make a biscuit mix. Obviously, you don't want to add too much. So you probably won't need the entire can. You could, if you wanted to, when we get to this next step, you could add the rest of that into this cream of chicken soup that we have here. You could also put it into this pan. I would add maybe a little bit of flour and kind of make a roux situation happening so it may thicken up the sauce that you're about to make. But if you don't want to waste it, those are some options. If you're cool with using it for something else, if you have a recipe that definitely uses evaporated milk, then just use it in that. So because we're not making actual biscuits, this doesn't have to be as doughy, but you don't want to steer too far away from what it would look like if you were actually making biscuits with this. Okay, so that's pretty much mixed. We're going to set that off to the side. And then the last thing that we're going to do, now I'll tell you, this look weirds me out because I don't really like cream of chicken from a can. If you've ever seen it, you're about to see some stuff. But it's great flavor. It looks a little bit weird, but it's going to add some great flavor. And this is basically part of the sauce that is going to bake down into this and make kind of that chicken pot pie look of sauce. Now, if you are looking at this, you're like, nope, I don't want to do that. You could easily just make a roux, add in some milk, make kind of a thinner gravy, and then add the seasonings that you would normally see in this type of dish. So basil, parsley, salt, pepper, garlic, all of those, and then just season up, a bechamel sauce basically, and put that in there instead of doing what we're gonna do. But so I have the liquid that we drained from our chicken, and we're gonna add in this cream of chicken soup. And we're basically putting this from thick and goopy back to a manageable sauce consistency. Like I said, this looks weird. I know that. I don't know who eats this on a regular basis, but to each their own, I guess. So we're gonna kind of mix this together. I got a bowl that's way too small, but that's okay, because I'm just gonna dump it out. I don't even know why y'all are zooming in so close. Look, that does not look good. Okay, we're gonna pretend like that's mixed. It'll be fine. All right, so then We're gonna pour this on top, but do not mix it. It's gonna sit here at the top, and then it's gonna create a sauce, and it's gonna start picking up everything underneath it, and everything will come together in the oven. So I have my oven on 350, and we are gonna cook this for probably 50 minutes to an hour. Make sure that you check, especially because we have these biscuits, make sure that you're checking maybe every 20 minutes or so that you can make sure that your biscuits are not burning, because that's a big part of the meal that we do not want to mess up. So just make sure that it's not burning. All right, so from here, the last thing that we're going to do, you can do this one of two ways. You can either dump all of this out here and try to like smooth it out on top. You could just drop some biscuits on there as well, which is what I'm going to do. These don't have to be necessarily uniform. It'll help later when you go to cut this up for it to look pretty uniform, but as long as you just have some on top, that's what we're looking for. You could also, if you don't want to use the mix like we have here, you could just get a can of biscuits if you have some left over, or if it's more affordable for you to get a can of biscuits versus the two, I think the box was like $2.62, then you can do that. You can also, if you don't want to buy evaporated milk, if you have that gallon of milk that you bought for the two things, or you thought your kids were going to drink the milk and then all of a sudden they're like, I don't want milk now. What am I going to do with a whole gallon of milk? This could be it. So you don't have to use evaporated milk. That's what the recipe calls for. But you could also just use the milk that you have on hand. All right, so now I have some left over. Just gonna kind of zhuzh that. Just plop it everywhere. Okay, so that's it. A lot of your seasoning is already in there. You can add seasoning to all of that mix in terms of that first layer that we put on there. If you wanted to, you could add more seasoning into that. I would definitely add, and I should have done this earlier, I'm definitely going to add some salt. Just because all of those things are gonna be saltless for sure. All right, let me show you what this looks like. So you'll put this in the oven 50 to 60 minutes. Check those biscuits probably every 20 minutes or so. That way you know that they're not going to burn. Now, this one, I will tell you, it's gonna look a little different than this one. I made the biscuits from scratch. It was a 3-ingredient, and I'm gonna tell you right now, if you think Popeye's biscuits are dry, this may give it a run for its money. So pick and choose what kind of biscuits that you wanna make, but this is what we're looking at. So everything has cooked down, that soup cooked in with everything else around it, and now you have this pot pie with these great biscuits on top. So I'm gonna scoop some out just so you guys can see this. I did, when I brought it out, I put some butter on top of the biscuits, just so that you can kind of get some extra flavor. But biscuit, all of that goodness underneath. And then, as I said, this made up a pretty good amount in this pan compared to what we're gonna have here. So this whole thing, it only costs about, I think it was $6 to $7. I have it below how much it costs, but this one also very, very affordable. This one very affordable. You're using shelf staple stuff that's really, really cheap and cost effective. So we've got these two recipes. You can read those down below, but we're gonna be back with another For the Home Cook real soon, where I've got 2 more recipes that you can try out. Thanks for joining us.